All right, welcome everybody to Radicalized Truth Survives. I'm Heidi Cuda. I'm here with Jim Stewartson, High Fidelity, Sean Connor, three punk rock dads trying to help save the world for reals. I feel very lucky in this terrible time of turmoil to have some friends in arms who actually are trying to do the hard work of illuminating what's really happening to our country and really to global democracies. There is a war on global democracies, and we every week try to bring you the best show we can to help narrate what we feel are the important facts to know. We are a show that investigates disinformation, and every week we try to bring it to you straight. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into Frontloaded.
Frontloaded.
Thank you so much for the new intro, Connor. I love it. And the only thing is I do all my investigative work from bed because I like to be cozy when I'm trying to investigate all these fuckers.
Try to keep it PG-13 around here.
Maybe someday I'll have a desk, you know. So super quick, I just wanted to do a couple little items. One of them is 6 degrees of separation from Tom Barrack. I did a little interview with with our friend Martin Scheel, former IRS criminal investigator, and he took the time to look at all the tentacles that reach to Tom Barrack, where they connect with the people in Trump's orbit, where those connections take us to Jeffrey Epstein, and where those connections take us to Russian oligarchs. It's pretty profound. I called it Red Meat and Beer, because of course it goes all the way from a steakhouse in New York, you know, to a, back channel meeting in the Seychelles. I recommend you guys take a look at that. It's complicated, but it's important because I think it's our duty. Certainly, I feel it's my duty, civic duty, that we continue to probe all the tentacles to show just really how damning this presidency, this quote unquote presidency of Trump really has been for the safety of our democracy. A lot of mafioso connections there. So that's the first item. The second item is pretty cool. Thanks to the National Observer in Canada, I had a really lovely interchange with Margaret Atwood. That's pretty amazing. That is like one of the things that social media has done for us. Obviously, her visionary writing makes her very well qualified to comment on these times in which we live. She offered words in the brief interview that I did. I was able to ask her a question. She offered words about how to deal with disinformation and people that you're encountering who are getting bad facts. And like we've learned, we meet them where they're at. We ask them where they're getting their information, and we just listen to them and hopefully have an impact when they come circling back, perhaps to maybe have more of an interchange. It's tough because I want like a mass deprogramming, operation to occur. But really what we are learning, particularly with those in our life, is to meet them where they're at. But the image that you just had up, Sean, was the really important thing. I had quoted her from that interview about how, white male property owners really want to go back to the time when they were the ones who were in control of everything. And she said to me, white male property owners, women aren't mentioned in the original Constitution, have no political power, are not therefore full citizens in law, plus got the vote in the US only in 1920 via an amendment in the Constitution. Clearly, amendments can be overturned. What's next? Wow. Yeah. So I think, and I tweeted out to her, Sean, what you had said and what Ellen had said, that part of what we're seeing with all this anti-choice, nonsense is the ability to make these crimes to take away women's ability to vote. And wouldn't that be, some kind of bullshit? So
that's what they want. Let's be real clear. They want to turn women back into submissive, lower class citizens. That's what they want.
Is the word you're looking for.
Yes.
Chattel.
Peter Thiel said out loud that women's suffrage is the problem. right now, as opposed to the fucking solution, or at least has given us a chance. So, first of all, I also, oh my God, Margaret Atwood, I can't believe
Yeah.
you got to talk to her. That I said this to you before, but the predictive power of The Handmaid's Tale may
Unbelievable.
help save our fucking democracy, right? Because people have seen it.
Wow.
They saw it on TV.
Yeah.
They read the book. They're like, I
Yeah.
know what this is. I've
Yeah.
seen that shit before. I see where it goes. I've seen what happens when
Yeah.
that actually comes into power. So,
Right.
Margaret Atwood, bless you. I'm not
Yeah.
religious, but bless you. Thank you for
Yeah.
everything you've done.
Yeah. And
Incredible.
And congrats
to
on
have,
talking to her, Heidi.
well, to have her voice in this time, and she's been very active doing interviews and showing up, just being there for people right now who are really concerned. And thank God for the visionaries, truly. And
Yep.
speaking of white male property owner privilege, I'm so looking forward to having our upcoming guest Fred Wellman explain to us where and what inspired him to write a thread about Peter Thiel and how we should be framing the purchase of our democracy. So we're going to have a really great time talking to him. And it's going to be so exciting. And I'm so glad he's going to be here. So let's go ahead and have Hi-Fi jump into word phrase of the week.
There you go, bud.
All right. So, word phrase of the week this week is Provokatsiya. And you may ask yourself, what is Provokatsiya? Well, it's a
That's a
Russian.
word.
Yes, that's why we're here. Provokatsiya is a Russian word, and what it details is it is a feigned crisis, normally done by government or military or private intelligence agency operations. And these are designed to elicit a very specific response from a population of a country. And that response is generally outrage, because when people get outraged, they do stupid things, which fuels more outrage, and it becomes a vicious spiral. So be aware that Provokatsiya is out there, and understand that it will be used against you.
Wow. And the word provoke is written right into it.
It's right there, right? Like,
Yep.
look, you can look at depending on the context, you can look at almost all of this as Provokatsiya. I always get that wrong. Because it's the Russians trying to radicalize a bunch of people, right? And a better word could not be brought up these days, because all the shit we're seeing, you can argue to some extent the Buffalo murder, right, which is a result of I'm not going to try and say the word again because
It's like me with last names.
Provokatsiya. Thank you.
Provokatsiya.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
thank you.
We've had multiple mass murders, and there are questions going, wow, we've got this war that Russia appears to be losing in Ukraine, and yet all we're doing right now is we're just spiraling out into just this horrible, country that's I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed of my country right now. What the fuck
Don't
are
be
we
ashamed
doing?
of your country.
Yeah.
What
Hey,
the fuck
hey,
are we doing?
it-
What the fuck are we doing? I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
That's the response they want, Heidi. That's what they
know.
want. They want people confused. They want people angry.
Yeah.
And I'd like to actually give you two examples of Provokatsiya. That one is occurring right now, and that would be the way that the IDF in Israel is treating Palestinians with regards to homesteading. And another example I'd like to give you would be the fights between the Proud Boys and Antifa in Portland and Los Angeles 2020, 2021, that was specifically designed events to provoke outrage on both the left and the right in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
You're damn right.
Yeah.
And there's some people out there still doing it right now.
Yeah.
a lot of fake Antifa out there that is, pretending to be super against Nazis, but actually all they do is amplify them. So, I'm not going to get into to gory details right now, but at some point, these people are going to need to get exposed.
There needs to be a reckoning. All right, so that's it for word phrase of the week. How about we do why it matters?
Let's do it, buddy.
Why does it matter? Why does it matter? Why high fidelity?
All right, why it matters this week. First thing we're going to talk about is hooray for corporate accelerationists. What do you mean by that, Josh? Sounds kind of socialist or something. Well, no, actually, what I'd like to point out is that both Amazon and Starbucks, two of the largest corporations in the country, almost globally, have both been found guilty by the National Labor Relations Board of engaging in probable illegal activity with regards to their countermeasures against unionization efforts within their companies. One company held employees in a anti-union assembly, and another company fired a bunch of workers who were aligned with the unionization movement. Both of these things, absolutely illegal.
Yeah, you're not supposed to do that as far as I can tell.
Yeah. And, we've discussed earlier about how there is currently a white collar crime wave running across America and how it needs to be stopped. This is just one more symptom of that. If we talk about corporations and how they interact with workers and employees, one need only look at a recent report that was put out by consultants for Amazon that said that the CEO's compensation, 40 million was incommensurate with either a pay rise or the seriousness of his duties. No one deserves to make that much money for what he does. That's and right. Another situation I want to point out is if you look at the CEO of Intel, Patrick Gelsinger, recently a study came out that showed that he makes 2,700 times more than the lowest paid employee at Intel. This is, it's the root of income inequality, and it's squeezing American workers, right? And we talk about inflation, and how inflation is squeezing the American wallet. At the same time, these companies, particularly the oil companies, are reporting record profits, like record profits, billions and billions and billions of dollars, paying no taxes. So is it really inflation, or is it corporate price gouging designed to drive American workers down?
It's the oil and war economy in full effect. They're profiting off the war. Whoopee. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Next story we're going to talk about is kids. It's time we talked about cops. Now, it's a tough story. And I know a lot of good cops, and I support good cops. Unfortunately, there's a lot of negative things associated with the police. I think we're all aware of it. But one of the things that just came out recently that people need to know about is that a Reuters study showed that multiple police instructors had ties to either white supremacist or anti-government militia type organizations. There is such a thing as groupthink, where ideas spread amongst groups and become a dominant ideology in that group. So having our police trained by white supremacists or anti-government militants kind of seems like a bad idea, right? We've known about this since 2006 when the FBI said to us, there's a white supremacist infiltration problem in law enforcement. We've known about gangs in the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department since the late 90s. Here we are in 2022. Nothing's been done. We need to do something about that.
I couldn't agree more. Full disclosure, I have a kid who's planning on, for real as an adult, becoming a cop.
Great.
I've known cops that were awesome, and some I've had cops, if not save my life, certainly help me in the past. But the current structure of law enforcement is white supremacist. It is built in, particularly police unions, which are not unions at all. They have almost no relationship to labor unions. They're basically just clubs that allow the police to be ungoverned by anybody who's elected. And that's a great deal of the reason why this Jim Crow shit goes on in all of these police unions, because it started there, because that's where it came from. Because it's a Jim Crow era way to suppress minorities and populations that they don't like.
Absolutely.
There is a no. I was just going to sort of touch on the fact that there is a systemic issue, I think, within the law enforcement, because it does appeal to those character traits that are also found in authoritarian white supremacist groups. There's the authority, there's the power, there's the legal owning of weapons, the use of force. Those things get radicalized in the individual, and so they end up in those types of professions, and they end up creating a bad name for those professions as they're just bad individuals, right? It's not the position, the profession at all that it's inherently bad. It's these bad individuals within that profession.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. A lot of people who want to dominate others for whatever reason, especially racists, right? Like if you're a racist and you want to go oppress black people, you could become a landlord, or you could become a cop.
That's right.
In my very multiculti city, I've known very many beautiful people in law enforcement, and what they really need is a support structure so they don't have to follow in line when they see people doing when their own colleagues are doing things that are absolutely abusive or improper. And so I like, as Paul Mason said, what they did after World War II in Germany is they actually, I believe this is what he said, they actually had an enforcement agency to make sure that there was somebody overseeing the law enforcement, and I think that that's what's been lacking.
They had anti-fascist police. They had literal police that were there to root out fascists wherever they were, whether they were in the police department or anywhere else.
Right.
That's what we fucking need right now. People, like, at some point we're going to realize fascism won't stop on its own. It has to be defeated. I'm going to repeat that until I fucking croak. Wherever it is, whether it's in the police department or whether it's in Ukraine.
Wherever it is.
One of the other main things I know that's been invaluable to these police departments, when there's been the argument about defund the police, in the way that was misquoted, misphrased, obviously the departments that had the budget and finances go toward psychiatric assistance when the 911 calls were put in, and they were routed correctly to an individual either with emergency psychological training. The incidents of interaction, arrest, violence would drop down to almost less than 10%. And not only were the individuals making those calls, their lives were saved and their lives were bettered from having that interaction. But the police themselves were so fucking grateful to have this help, because they're not trained. They're not trained in this. And the majority of these 911 calls that result in violence are because of an individual with some sort of episode, largely. So I mean, just hearing how grateful they were to get that assistance and that help, is profound. I think we need to pay more attention to that.
I agree. There's nobody else to call. There's nobody else to call, right? And you call 911, and all they got is our police and fire department. Are you being robbed or are you on fire? Neither.
Right.
And if you're not trained in seeing someone in the middle of a manic or schizophrenic episode, it's going to be it's going to be aggressive. It's going to be confrontational.
We need
typically,
mental health units
And-
dispatched
and
everywhere, from our hospitals to law
de-escalation
enforcement.
instead of
Yes.
what they
that's
do.
correct. That's right.
But,
Yeah.
and the cops, I mean, they don't know how to do it. You know, they know
They're
how
not
to.
trained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I think we're seeing here is that is very obvious to any rational adult in the United States that we need to have a very difficult discussion
Yeah.
about policing and how it's enacted in this country. The citizens of this country should have transparency, and the police have to have accountability. Otherwise, protect and serve is just going to be abuse and intimidate, and that needs to stop. So
All
let's move
right.
on.
All right. Yeah. Wow.
Last one.
Profound.
Yeah.
Our last story this week is Meta Gamble, Meta Corruption, Meta Russia. So 5 states just recently sued a virtual casino located in the metaverse to stop it from selling NFTs. This casino was called the Flamingo Casino in the metaverse and attempted to put out the image that it was connected to the actual Flamingo Casino in Las Vegas. Research shows that it was not connected to the Flamingo Casino in Vegas. And actually tracing back the IP addresses and the technology and everything, found out the casino was actually located in Russia. So what we have is a scam involving Russians taking money for NFTs and avoiding sanctions by using the metaverse. Why this matters? The internet moves at the speed of the internet. Our laws move at the speed of the courts and our government. One is vastly outpacing the other. Obviously, we need regulation. We need it quickly, and we cannot wait. So,
Word.
Yeah.
Word.
Yep.
You know, it. I wish we had the luxury of fighting for regulation right now. You know,
Yeah.
instead we're fighting for women's rights. We're fighting for, you know, all these very basic things that we thought we took care of, you
Yeah.
know, a century ago. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you for that, Hi-Fi. You always bring up things that may be difficult, but they're important that we look at them and have these conversations and open up the door to have these conversations. Before we go into brief legal briefs, I want to clarify my emotional outburst at the beginning, which is that I'm not ashamed of my country. I'm ashamed of the extremists and their gun fetish, and that when you look at the numbers of murders that occur in our country and the multiple mass murders that have occurred, just not even in the last 24 hours, you know, it's so far past time to actually prioritize doing something about this. And I just feel that it's escalating. And I also feel that part of hybrid warfare is an infection that's having an impact on this. And I know we'll talk about it a bit more later, but I'm sad. I'm sad.
I don't want you to be sorry for feeling shame about the way our country is working or not working right now. Look, I consider myself a patriot with a little p, like, you know, like I actually care about my fucking country. I love it. I love America, but I'm ashamed of it right now. I'm ashamed of the fact that we are so blind that we cannot actually see what's happening in front of us and do something about it, and that so many people are getting hurt in the process.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to say, you know, I'm ashamed of our country right now.
Sad.
It doesn't mean I hate the country. It doesn't mean I hate anyone in it. But you know, if your kid does something bad, it's okay to say I'm ashamed of you for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and if your
No,
kid
that's
does
right.
something bad, there's consequences. You don't just allow it to
That's
continue,
right.
to continue, to continue. And in our case, we're just going to have another, you know, news shit show from Buffalo, and everybody's going to say, oh, mental health issues, and everything that we've been reporting on and you guys have been reporting on, you know, manifests itself and is very obviously having a major impact, you know, on our world. And last night I got to hear Maxine Waters speak, and she's amazing. She's in her 80s. She's wearing 4 or 5 inch heels. She looks brilliant, and she just got up there and she was like, "Take no shit." And I'm like, "Yeah, take no shit. Like, I don't want to take any shit. Like, she doesn't take
I
shit.
agree
I'm
with
not
that.
going to take shit." And you don't want to know something? We got to do something about our shit right now.
That's right. It's right. And, I always view it in terms of playing on a sports team. I played, soccer for so long, and played in college, and, playing on so many different teams. I think my senior year in high school, I was playing on like 6 different teams. And so you get to know, you get to know people somewhat. Obviously, you play on a team longer, you get to know them. But there's people you don't fucking like on that team. There's people you're stuck with for years that you're never going to get along with, that you just don't fucking like, that you're going to personally, conflict with. There's fights on the field in practice. There's fights in the locker room. But at the end of the day, you all played for the same crest. You played for the same kit.
That's right.
You had to play together. There was a coach. He had to implement the strategy. I mean, each person has to know their role and their position, or shit got out of whack. But that doesn't mean that you're going to have to get along. That everybody's going to have to hold hands and kumbaya. It just means that you all, here's the key, you all have to understand, you have to have a shared vision of where you're going.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we've fractured severely. That vision of where we're going or where we want to go has splintered and fractured.
Well, we've been infiltrated. We've been infiltrated. Everything's been infiltrated. Our NRA was infiltrated. Our GOP was infiltrated. Our left was infiltrated. We're looking at so many bad actors that are working on behalf of foreign interests that are not,
It's that, Heidi. It's not just the infiltration, though. There is a deep-seated anger and frustration within, I would say, the middle class, right? There is, and even if that it gets weaponized, middle class to the right wing differently than it does to the left. But there's been a stagnation. I mean, Elizabeth Warren has said this time and again. There's been a stagnation of wages since the 70s. You used to be able to work a factory job, right, out of high school, and put your kids through college, own a house with a mortgage, and stay out of debt, and continue to see your wages increase, and have
the wealth disparity is fucking real and severe, and has been absolutely on a rocket ship since the mid 70s.
That's right.
And it is absolutely at the very bottom of a lot of this has to get fixed. Or the problem is that involves like systems of government and shit, right? Financial systems. Like, how do you fix that, right? And
that's the shared vision of how do you
that's the shared vision, and that's
and
we need some visionaries to have platforms and to mobilize people across across party lines, and we need that desperately.
Well, tell the DNC to call me. Anyway.
Yeah.
I know we're about to have our guest. We're about to have on as a strategist, right?
Well, there you go. Let's talk to Fred too. Yeah.
That's so exciting. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. We're going to learn a lot from Fred. Okay, so we do have to issue a trigger warning, as if this content we've just had before you wasn't powerful or potent enough, but we do have a trigger warning in advance of brief legal briefs.
Yes.
Brief legal briefs.
And it's not Sean's favorite green underwear that we're warning you about.
It's a representation of Sean's favorite green underwear. But actually, anyway.
That's not the actual underwear.
All right.
So we have been keeping track of and reporting on the various lawsuits against social media companies in the effort and attempt to hold them liable for injuries, damages. Unfortunately, for the majority of these, there are suicides from individuals, teenagers, on down. What I'm reporting on today, the brief legal brief today, is a case was filed recently by a Pennsylvania mother who is suing TikTok over the death of her 10-year-old excuse me, over her 10-year-old daughter. I have a 10-year-old daughter. The 10-year-old child was attempting to record a video and participate in a TikTok, what's called a blackout challenge. And if you know TikTok, there are these challenges that they go and they do, and they imitate them, and then they re-upload the video. Well, the blackout challenge was it's It's a viral stunt that encourages people to kind of choke themselves until they pass out, and they film themselves doing that. Unfortunately, horrifically, tragically, this young 10-year-old girl was found unconscious and later died in the hospital. Her mother is, I think, quite appropriately and aggressively filed a lawsuit against naming TikTok the defendants, and arguing that the algorithm determined that the blackout challenge was well tailored and suited to be likely of interest to her 10-year-old daughter. And the complaint alleges that we know that the app and algorithm are intended to maximize the user engagement, and so they're going directly at the sort of heart of the problem here. And I applaud them. I praise them. I want to keep track of this and follow this as we follow the other cases that have been filed against these companies. They need to be held accountable. This is one life is too many. This is the third.
Yeah.
This is the third case now that we've seen filed, and it's just horrific. And I don't know why it takes long. There's no words to describe how tragic this is. But
Parents have to be aware that there are monsters in their children's bedrooms, and these monsters are their computers and their electronic devices that, as Jim so eloquently wrote about in one of his recent posts, the internet has been, weaponized by truly awful people. And so even though we don't want to bring you these stories, I just feel like we wouldn't be doing our job if we did not make people aware of these. So thank you for that.
That's right. And quickly, another case that's grisly and dark that you all may remember from 2014, the two journalists that were horrifically beheaded. The family of one of them, of Stephen Sotloff, has filed a federal lawsuit against Qatar, alleging that Qatar, which, if you know about the U.S.-Qatar relations, it's kind of one of our friends, our partners, alleges that Qatar contributed $800,000 to extremist Islamic State fighters, to terrorist organizations. Now, this is interesting because typically foreign countries, government officials can't be sued in the United States court, but the U.S. Anti-Terrorism Act allows terror victims to seek damages from private entities connected to governments. So it's kind of the first that I've seen, the first that I know of, where this individual group is actually seeking to hold the Qatar National Bank and the Qatar charity organization accountable for their contributions to these extremist groups that allegedly were responsible for the execution of these two journalists.
And this could set a precedent, right? This is kind of a precedent center. Yeah. Wouldn't it be
Sure.
great if we could also sue the bank that actually loaned Russia the money to go after our democracy in 2016?
Yeah,
That'd be lovely.
I will also note that Qatar, Qatar, however you want to pronounce it, is also a big fan of Jared Kushner and vice versa.
Yeah.
True.
And who figures prominently in my interview, Red Meat and Beer, with Marty, by the way, because he continually is bailed out by people with interesting ties. So, well, that was about as dark as we've ever gotten. But again, man, we have to inform people. So thank you very much for that. And now we're going to lighten everything up with Hellscape.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Jim Stewartsen's Hellscape. Oh, fuck.
You're on, buddy.
The oh fuck signifying the happy fun part.
This is the. Well, look, I'm going to start this off with, Heidi mentioned a piece that I wrote recently. I'm going to start this off with a bit of a cuddly metaphor that is actually not so cuddly after all. I wrote a piece that called "We Are in the Terrible Twos of the Global Consciousness," which I mean almost literally. If you look at the internet, if you look at all of a sudden 5 billion people connected to each other at more or less light speed, right? You get behaviors that you're not going to expect. right? So my feeling is that what we're seeing out there with all of the computers being connected, all the people being connected, both the good parts and the bad parts of that are like a baby kind of waking up, right? It's 5 billion neurons, all sort of trying to organize themselves together. And as a father of 3, I immediately thought of the terrible twos. The terrible twos are this period of time when your child is perfectly capable of harming himself or others, but has no conscience, is basically a sociopath, right? So you give it a fork and it might stab mommy with it because she makes a funny sound, or it might stick it in a light socket or electric socket, or it might use it for food. You just don't know, right? Because it's father and the terrible two. And my feeling is that that's basically what's happened to the internet, but worse. We had this baby growing up in the 90s, and I was there. I was, and the baby was getting happy and fat and super stoked, right? And then all of a sudden the .com crash happened because we were feeding the baby all kinds of shit, and it just, didn't work. And so all the companies that sort of fed the baby fell away, but the baby was still there, crawling around, basically on its own, right? Then 9/11 happens, right? So .com crash, 9/11, and this internet baby is out there basically just fucking has no real, oversight at all. And most of the companies that are in it are, retail and shit like that, right? Amazon and stuff. And so right during that period, what happens? Peter fucking Thiel and the PayPal mafia show up with a whole bunch of Russian money.
Ta-da.
And they set up these networks in the baby's brain. And these networks are specifically negativity reinforcement networks. That's what we learned from the whistleblower at Facebook and what we've all experienced, right? Is that these things were designed from the start to ramp up engagement, which, as they knew, psychologically meant negative feedback. When you base it on engagement, you get negativity. The reason for that is simple. Think about when we were Neanderthals and we're out in there. You see a pretty flower and you see a fucking saber-toothed tiger. Which one are you going to pay attention to? You're going to pay attention to the fucking tiger because you're terrified and it's going to eat you. And the fucking flower could wait, right? That's basically what this model is, and it became a feedback loop, and it sucked in all these other neurons that weren't involved in this baby's brain, and it sucked them in through these negative reinforcement loops, right? So this fucking baby now is in the terrible twos, is kind of growing up, and now it's able to lumber around and it's lurching towards the most stimulating thing, right? Which is what all babies do. And the most stimulating thing is, negative, right? And so we've built ourselves this baby, and I think even worse now, right now, we've handed this fucking baby a loaded gun, right? We've created a scenario where literal democracy, where civilization is at risk because this baby was poisoned. It was influenced. Somebody left it in the park for a long time, and somebody came up and whispered to it. And now the baby needs to have a fucking timeout. And I don't want to overstretch this metaphor, but I swear to God, when you got an angry 2-year-old, you sit their ass down on the steps and let them scream their brains off all they want. And it's totally fine. Knock yourself out, please. Continue to scream your brains out over there while the grown-ups have a drink over here, right? We're going to have to seriously regulate these enormous networks. that all they do is create negative feedback loops, poison the American mind, and at the end of the day, feed the fascists that use it. And I see what happened in Buffalo, right?
Yeah.
It is not separable from this fucking baby. This guy, the fucking murderer, Nazi, who killed 10 black people in Buffalo, where did he get radicalized? What was the first place he went to in May of 2020? 4chan.
4chan.
Specifically Pulp. Specifically the place where QAnon started, right? 4chan. Also, he mentions very prominently 8chan, that he is going to put his manifesto on 8chan. 8chan is where the Nazi mass murderer in Christchurch live streamed his
That's right.
murder.
Akon?
No, it was 8chan at the time. So this guy got radicalized on 4chan and 8chan, where great replacement theory used to be, a topic. Even there, though, like, it wasn't something you saw all the time. It was still pretty exotic. It's still pretty, like, crazy. Like, what do you mean all white people are getting replaced? Like, that's something only very extreme people say. And now it's something they all say. Tucker Carlson, not to mention like Flynn and the entirety of QAnon. I am afraid that what we saw in Buffalo is just the beginning of a new wave of this, because though the poison of the great replacement lie has now been sinking in for a long time, and I've been watching these groups on Telegram get bigger and bigger and more radicalized and more open about their feelings and more willing to go out and recruit people, and those people are more willing to join them. We're really facing a Nazi, like, real thing, a Nazi insurgency in this country. And I think it's something, we're going to have to grapple with sooner or later, and I sure as hell hope it's sooner.
Yeah.
You want to know one thing I noticed? One thing I noticed with all of the media coverage about this dumbass kid in Buffalo who killed all these people is I didn't really see 4chan mentioned at all. It's almost like they're avoiding that subject. They're not talking about where he was radicalized. They're talking about great replacement theory and how it's radicalizing people, but they're not mentioning the channels.
They're not getting the
poison
movement,
is seeping in. Yeah. And I find that very interesting.
Well, here, if you guys want to indulge me here, some analytics. We have this, obviously, Google Trends, right? And the Great Replacement is the topic, obviously peaking at Christchurch, March 2019. August 2019 was El Paso, Texas, Walmart, as well as the Dayton, Ohio event. But within here, you also see that the related topics, which I find very, very interesting. Right here, here it is. This guy. So these are the related topics, right? Related to people searching for great replacement theory. So you have, obviously, you have Tucker Carlson tied in with those searches, but more specifically, you have people searching for these PDFs, which is quite frightening. So they're actually looking for the Great Replacement Manifesto, the PDF, the document, the initial document that was the sort of originator of all this garbage. And again, you have Tucker Carlson coming here as a related queries from the Great Replacement.
The kind of original one was actually Anders Breivik, who
that's right.
murdered people in Norway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a 1,000-page manifesto,
Yeah.
and he claimed to be a knight of the Order of Templar, and Brenton Tarrant claimed to be, had Knights of Malta stuff all over his gun. There's a lot of very, very strange ties, to these terrorists, and that's what they are, right? They're terrorists. They're
And
trained terrorists.
Right.
And they
Who
all have
trained them? Why? What's the direction? Like, not I do not believe that all of these are just lone wolves who just
No.
did this on their own.
I will say, this is the part where I say, damn it, Jim, because every time you make these predictions, unfortunately, you are not incorrect. Also, Hi-Fi 4chan is trending on that lovely platform, Twitter, which we have seen trending in a truly awful direction.
They're both cesspools.
you guys have, and I've did a screenshot of this, and I've blurred out all the names, so we don't have to show anyone. But when you search Google for mass shooter, right, and you look at the images, you see something very obvious, right? And
yeah,
the names
I know what you see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the horror.
Yeah.
and
Bunch of white boys afraid of being replaced.
Yep.
But
shut up, you fucking.
But as we know,
you
they
babes.
have been radicalized, though. They have been radicalized. And
That's
who
right.
has been
Yeah.
radicalizing them? And who do these people work for? This is what we have been doing for the last 6 months, what you guys have been invested in for the last few years, because we've seen it. And, everything that the whole purpose of this show is to expose what's actually going on. And when Jim talks about the impacts that this radicalization is having, it's not on just a handful of lone wolves. There's millions of people who are being radicalized with this junk, and we desperately need to do something about it. We need executive orders, and we need a global treaty, as we've talked about before, where democratic leaders get together and come up with a plan on how we're going to address what is essentially an assault on global democracies through information radicalization.
That's right.
So,
and I mean, you see, obviously, also that there is a specific age range here. That we see, and part of that is because of the lack of development and maturity of the brain, which is physiological fact that the late teenage boy, right, has not fully developed the critical thinking skills. Risk taking is still a thing, so there's not a full understanding yet of the way in which his risks that they're taking will impact the world. They're much more easily and susceptible to influence, right? What's it called? Peer pressure, things like that. So if they're spending their time on these 4chans.
This guy was 16. He was 16 when because of COVID, he got stuck, I guess, at home and went to 4chan.
Yeah.
And look, that kid's parents, whoever the fuck they are, have responsibility here.
That's right.
If your kid is surfing on 4chan and you don't know it, or you're okay with it, you're not being a good parent. If you see fucking 4chan anywhere near your kid, you slap whatever device is out of their hand immediately and send them home without any supper.
That's right, guys. We just had Fred come in, so let's let's sound check him. Let's bring him on here. Fred, how are you, sir?
Good.
Fred, what's happening, man?
Good. How you guys doing? Sorry about the late arrival.
Oh,
No,
not
it's
bad.
fine, buddy.
Oh,
As you can see,
Putting
I'm
in
in
the
a
work.
a luxurious hotel room, the fine
Yes,
Fairfield.
I've been in that same hotel room thousands of times.
They're all the same
Excellent.
hotel room, Jim.
Gotta do it. Yeah. It's all the same. But I'm
we
here
are
right now. I pulled it off.
so happy to have you here. I'm going to do a quick,
Yeah.
brief intro, and then we're going to
Okay.
jump right in. We
Great.
have just been joined by Fred Wellman. He is a Democratic political consultant, co-founder of the Beer Hall Project, which is dedicated to pushing back against the erasure of January 6th and Republican anti-democratic efforts. A gentleman after our own heart. You are also a military veteran who served 4 combat tours over Operation Desert Storm and Iraqi freedom, and we are so excited you're taking the time to join us. I would very much like to jump into how I became a fangirl, and that was when I saw you say, we've been framing this Peter Thiel narrative all wrong. Can you talk
Yes.
about your inspiration there, and what, and can you tell our viewers what is, kind of how you came about doing it and what they should know?
Well, you left off a part. I do have a background in politics now. I was with the Lincoln Project as the senior advisor
Yes.
for Veterans Affairs, and then I was the
That's right.
executive director. So I've been in the PAC world. I do some PAC work now, and I also do candidate work. So I'm a political hack, and what I've seen is. The super PAC, obviously we've changed everything. The super PAC influences, we call them IE campaigns, are a huge part of these efforts now. And the money is unlimited, right? They just can spend money unlimited. So what you've seen is, what was guiding me was, Peter Thiel has invested, there's some great articles. He's invested in some 10 candidates across the country who are like-minded guys, this new right that, actually my podcast guest this week is Greg Sargent from the Washington Post, who's
Great.
really been diving in deep on this new right movement, which is the, ultra MAGA, whatever you want to call it. But an extremism that doesn't even believe in democracy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
so he's invested in candidates like JD Vance. He's invested in Eric Schmidt in Missouri. He's invested in a number of candidates across the country who share these, I don't want to call them values. I share this
Yeah.
mindset that is authoritarian in nature. And one of the big things I've been fighting in my professional life as a political consultant and the super PAC world is this movement of authoritarianism. So what I did notice is the Lincoln Project, what we did, we were very effective in targeting the Trump administration, Trump campaign, their enablers and partners, and getting in his head, right? Our work that we
Right.
did it was very much, we bought ad space just on Fox News in Washington, D.C. to make sure Donald Trump would see it. If you guys remember, right. And one of the ads, we did a whole ad about Brad Parscale and how much money he was making and he actually got fired. The article came out that we got the campaign manager fired. So that's really effective.
It was a psyop. It was
right. That's what we did. It's psyop. So here's what we've got. You got this money going, and the Democratic side doesn't do that effectively. But then you got Peter Thiel, and he's spending just unlimited, just ridiculously amounts of money to invest in the campaign. He started off with $10 million for JD Vance. Eventually, he's now spent $15 million in a super PAC buying a candidate, and he's created this candidate. And so as I was sitting there the day after JD Vance won, I was like, well, his investments are paying off, right? This was his first I think this was his first electoral test in a nomination process, was if he was, and I was just sitting there thinking, well, he bought himself a race. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And it just got to me that the press, and of course I'm very frustrated with the political press. It's something I talk about quite a bit if you follow me on Twitter or anywhere. And I'm a big fan of the media. I was a public relations hack in the military. I was a spokesman for General Petraeus and General Dempsey in Iraq. I had a PR firm for 10 years that focused on veterans issues. And I have a wonderful relationship with the media I worked with in all those spaces. The political press is another animal these days. The political press in the United States is part and parcel to this undermining of our democracy. The idea that everyone, something I talk about a lot is, after Trump took over or after Biden took over, everyone wanted to go back to normal, right? Normal. And our political press was one. They want to go, well, we got to go back to hitting them hard. We're going to be tough on them too. And again, it's like, well, it's not normal. You can't compare. There was a great tweet right before we went on the air. Somebody, the New York Times pitch bot. And he goes, it's a fake New York Times pitches. Yeah. And he goes, both the left and the right are weaponizing dangerous weapons in this war for our country, from pink chalk on the left to automatic weapons on the right. It's a class, right? It's the classic both sides. and the
Fantastic.
peapod is so real sometimes. So that's why I said, they should report. We should, maybe since the political press is going to do it right, maybe the business press could report on the situation, and we should treat Peter Thiel like an investor. Like. And I was just thinking how our friend, Elon Musk is trying to buy Twitter. The way they're reporting on Elon Musk buying Twitter, let's report on Peter Thiel buying our democracy the same way. He's invested $50 million, and his investments haven't paid off in other races. He's got competition there in Missouri. Rick Uihlein, another freaking nut job, has invested in Eric Greitens.
I know.
The most reprehensible people
guy.
in the service. Someone I've known for over 14 years through my military work. Rick Uihlein, who owns Uihlein, the packaging company, has spent about $3.5 million on Eric Greitens. So we've got these two lunatics, Thiel and Uihlein, fighting over our democracy. So I was just like, what? The business press should just report on this the way they would business, because that's what this is. These are corporate and oligarchs purchasing our democracy.
Yes.
With the intent to undermine it, with the intent to purchase an election, and they're doing it, and they're doing it right in front of our eyes because our political press is treating it normal. I got into a fight on Twitter with a guy named Jonathan Weissman from the New York Times, because he tweeted out something about JD Vance. JD Vance is gonna, probably gonna win that. I hate to say it, folks, but JD Vance is seen easily as a, an up and comer, self-made. And I said, okay, you're forgetting the $15 million freaking dollars that Peter Thiel invested in him. And man, he came after me, sent me an email. It was kind of funny. I should print it someday.
Oh, wow.
Just condescending email. He was going at me for
Post it.
No, 6 paragraphs. I've been all over Ohio. I know everything. And he ends it with, before you tweet next time, you should reach out to me. Go fuck yourself. I'm not a cuss.
You can cuss all you want on our
I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me, dude. Again, you're the problem.
That's the problem.
You're New York Times. You've wandered around Ohio. People thinking it's 6 months to the election. I'm very, very tired of these prognostications. They're like, oh, well, it's done. So that's where that whole thing came from.
The problem with the politics press reporting on that it's politics is it's not fucking politics, right? It's literally it's
cultural bullshit.
It's warfare. It's a party that has been completely overtaken by a cult, right? That all it wants to do is undermine democracy and take it over, and we can't, and we're still treating it like this is something we should be taking polls about.
Take it seriously and treat each party as like an equal, a balancing act. The Beer Hall project you mentioned at the beginning, Heidi, my project, the Beer Hall project, and the Beer Hall project came out of the idea, the realization on January 6th that January 6th wasn't the culmination of the Trumpist movement. It was really the start. If you know your history, the Beer Hall Putsch of 1923 in Munich was Hitler's failed attempt to overturn. He tried to seize the government of Bavaria, right? And he failed, and he went to jail. Kinda. He became more famous because he had such an easy trial. The judges had to convince the third judge to convict him. He got a year in jail where he wrote Mein Kampf, and in that whole process, he became more powerful. But Hitler figured out something key. He said he figured out that overthrowing the government and a violent approach to taking over the government wasn't going to be the answer. The answer would be manipulating the very weak levers of democracy and the institutions of Weimar Germany, and that's what he did. And what were the things he did? They othered people. It was the Bolsheviks and the Jews. They unleashed the SA. The brown shirts would get in these running battles with the Bolsheviks in the streets. And they just built it. So by 1933, he's like, "Hey, look, I can save you from all this violence."
And you know what they did?
And speaking of the New York Times, you'll recall their coverage of Hitler saying, "Oh, he's just using propaganda to bait the masses."
Well, and when they came out of prison. Don't you remember there's a famous paragraph when he was released. He comes from prison, obviously chagrined and humbled, and is expected to go back to Bavaria to live his life in peace. It's just like delusional, and that's 100 years ago. And so what we say the Beer Hall project is that period from 1923 to 1933 became chancellor. There's a playbook, and if you've ever read Ruth Ben-Ghiat, you're a big fan. Like I'm a huge fan. Strong Man, which is like my Bible. There's a playbook to this, and we're saying, look, I'm not saying that Republicans are Nazis. I don't need to. I'm just saying they're following the same authoritarian and fascist playbook to power. And so what they learned from January 6th was, well, in the paper coup portion of it, they learned, like you see with John Eastman's memos and his emails, hey, it didn't work this time because they didn't plan for it. But goddamn, they're planning for the next one, right?
Oh, yeah.
And they're not going to make the same mistakes they made last time. And as my friend Rick Wilson at the Lincoln Project used to say, a coup that goes unpunished is practice.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That's right. That's right.
Bingo.
Hi-Fi, I
that-
know you're chomping at the bit to say something, but I want to ask him one thing that relates to this subject. After your Thiel thread, this is exactly what happened when I used to hammer away at Robert Mercer. These guys are narcissists. They're thin-skinned. They pay attention to everything. After we were all hammering away at Mercer, there were all these puff pieces and all the major media. Oh, Mercer's stepping away. He's not going to be funding anti-democratic efforts anymore. And it turned out to be total bullshit. I called it on it. I have threads all
Usually
over the
is.
place on it. It usually is. Right after your viral thread on Thiel, here came the CNN pieces. Oh, Thiel is stepping back. He's not going to spend any more money. He feels the $25 million he's already gotten his ROI. I call bullshit. But it shows.
He's a liar.
He knows we're watching, and
That's
we're
right.
fighting. We're coming after
Bingo.
him, and
That's
and
right.
it has to be. We have to call these guys out. They're oligarchs in every sense of the word. I mean, that's the irony of what we're watching unfold in Russia right now, and all the oligarchs around the corners. Jesus, we got our own Elon
Yeah.
Musk,
Got it.
Thiel,
Yeah.
Uline.
Yeah.
It's a monstrosity. And when the damage and the danger for me, and what upsets me, is that my colleagues on the left, the Democrats, just simply aren't fighting the same battle. Every time about
They're
Soros.
not.
Soros was funding freaking actual democracy initiatives.
Yeah.
He's not spending money on super PACs that are attacking the Republicans. And that's
Thank
what worries
you.
me the most. As we go into the election cycle, the left still continues to field super PACs and 527s and 501, C3s, the dark money groups, C4 groups. But they're always like these huggy feely, our policies are awesome groups. It's like, they're never like going after it. And one thing I compare, like, are you guys ever watched Ted Lasso?
Yes.
Watch this show.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so in
Huge fan,
season, I'm not
huge
going to
fan.
ruin it for you. Then.
Yeah.
So in season 2, right, one of the big complaints that Roy has is that basically Jamie Tartt's turned into a team player, right?
Yeah.
Right? He's like he's a
Exactly.
good guy now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my Siri's talking to me. So that Jamie's turned into a good guy, and he's not now. He's a team player, and what they really needed was a bad guy, because every
Yep.
team needs that one guy who's going to do the hard work to get inside the head of the opponent and make him make errors, which is what Jamie
That's
does, right? And that's what I think
Right.
Lincoln Project did well, and Midas Touch does well, and Don Winslow
Right.
does well. But on the
Yeah.
Democratic side, the big money on the Democratic side, that's not what they're investing in. Hillary Clinton's
Right.
PAC and Barack Obama's PAC, and they're wonderful. They're all sunny, and you know what I mean. And that's great. I mean,
We
it's
do.
great. But one thing we say all the time in my work is, look, you can't bring a policy pen to a gunfight, and we're in a gunfight. We're in an artillery battle. We're in a tank fight for our democracy. And I worry too much that my progressive friends who have money are investing their money in huggy feely shit, and what we need is fights.
It's
You
not,
should be
but
worried.
it's not.
Counterpunch.
It's not just the left, though, right? It's like the DOJ, for example.
Well,
you know,
oh my
not
God.
to get not to change the subject too much, but I think, like when the scariest speech, and I've heard every Mike Flynn speech, like Donald Trump, every fucking fascist you can, you can imagine.
Yep. God bless you. I can't watch it.
Yeah, and
Yeah, Jim does
where-
all
where-
that work for us.
Yeah.
where was I going? I lost my
Oh.
train.
Seen them all.
You,
What's
you
that?
were
I've seen
talking-
them all. Mike
You were
Flynn.
talking about Mike Flynn's speech and the very worst speech you
Oh,
ever saw.
sorry. Thank you. And the scariest speech, sorry about that, that
No.
I ever saw was Merrick Garland's speech, where he spent 40 minutes talking about norms,
Yeah.
Right.
just like 3
Right.
weeks ago or something. Like,
Right.
why in the fuck are you talking about norms, dude? Because
Did you see
all norms are in a war is the space that you're giving up to the enemy. Because they're not going to pay any attention to anything that doesn't have consequences.
It's like I
Norms
said,
don't have any
we're gonna norm and tradition our way out of a democracy.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, also was-
go ahead.
I was just going to say, talking about the media ownerships, was it last year? When we found out that was it OAN was financed by the same company
AT&T.
by AT&T that also funds CNN. Is that right? So
Yep.
they basically bookended,
sides.
right? both sides of it. So if you look at that in terms of a source of information, they don't give a fuck. They're playing, they're hedging their bets. They're going to, try and capture the extremist ends of those news cycles. And so, as a consumer of information, what are you left to assume is that, they just want to push.
You don't even have to get that exotic anymore, boxed, right? I mean, it's
Well, yes,
just
of course.
great
But I'm just saying-
replacement theory all day, every day.
But the single entity pushing both narratives to profit on both ends of it.
Absolutely.
Okay, Hi-Fi, you ask a question next because I'm chomping at the bit to keep going. So you go next.
Okay, so we're talking about Mr. Peter fucking Thiel. Sorry.
I had a hashtag PF.
And
I get that a lot,
Fred, Fred, I did a little research, and you live in St. Louis, Missouri, where ostensibly the fist-raising insurrectionist Josh Hawley is from, although apparently he doesn't live in Missouri anymore, which is strange.
Okay,
But Peter Thiel actually recruited Josh Hawley back at the Stanford Review back in his college days, gave him $300,000 for the Missouri Attorney General, and then got him to where he is today.
Correct.
And then I saw Blake Masters today after we had the shooting in Buffalo. Another Thiel candidate. He, we had this horrific shooting today where the shooter espoused great replacement theory, and Blake Masters goes out today and says the Democrats are shipping in millions of immigrants to replace America.
Right.
How do people not see this network associated to Peter Thiel? You look at his MAGA 3X work with General Flynn, how that led to QAnon. How is Peter Thiel not having flames held to his feet on a regular basis? What do we need to do?
I think that's what we get to. The system, they don't want to go after him. The mainline media, the mainstream media doesn't want to. Oh, we don't want to. There's nothing's illegal. There's nothing wrong with what he's doing, and they're scared. Now, I do get like Greg Sargent is, but Greg's doing his best. But overall, everyone just again, it comes down to the both sides thing. They've convinced themselves that there's some sort of an equal amount, right? That Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and these guys. Oh, it's just like George Soros or it's just.
No,
there's this, and I don't understand it. I do believe that the media is just as much of it's a perfect example of how our institutions are completely unprepared for the moment we face. And that goes for every democratic institution. You said at DOJ, the White House. I was starting to tell a story when you mentioned DOJ. Preet Bharara was losing his mind the other day, about a month ago. He and I spoke because he's spoken to somebody at the White House about tightening up the Hatch Act and the ethics regulations, and because of Trump. And they said, "Look, we don't want to overreact to Trump." And it's like, the fuck, you have to overreact. It's like, and he was losing his mind. That's why he's turned so badly on the Biden administration. Like, what the fuck are you talking about when I overreact? We may get Trump again. We may get Trump again. And it's this idea the Democrats, so many of these Democrats have, and I'm going to be I'll pay for it because they're fucking old. Okay. I mean, I love them to death, but my God, they're in their 80s. They're governing like it's 1991. And so we've got these our executive branches still got their ass from 1991. We've got the media that just wants to go back to normal and both sides of things so they can get their ratings back up again. You've got the average citizen is not aware of what's going on. The military has been politicized. I fear for our military, the way they've been politicized. That institution is not prepared. Tulsi Gabbard has a goddamn military secret, a secret or a top secret clearance. She's assigned in the reserve to Special Operations Command. And she's on TV smearing the chain of command, smearing our national policy, talking Russian talking points, and she still has a clearance.
Where is she doing it? She's doing it on Rumble. Who funded Rumble? Peter fucking Thiel.
Oh my
and
God.
Fox News. And so when people ask the military, like, well, she's not doing it in uniforms. Like, guys, that regulation was written in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the regulation. The regulation hasn't changed since 2001. I was a reservist, so I was a reservist on 9/11. I got out of the Army briefly. 9/11 hits. I was assigned to this headquarters in Atlanta, Georgia, and on 9/11 I got mobilized. And half the guys in the unit were all like local politicians because it was just the headquarters. But that's the same. The regulation is the same now as it was then, as far as governing the political activity of reserve service members.
Right.
Well, goddamn, guys. So things have changed since then. I mean, social media has grown. It's like they just refuse, and the institution itself, the military leadership, refuses to recognize that times have changed. I mean, just like our Constitution. I am positive Alexander Hamilton never fucking envisioned AR-15s.
Of course,
I'm positive. I mean, maybe
yeah.
I don't mean to put myself in the feet of a man who lived 200 years ago, but holy shitballs.
There's nothing well-regulated militia about any of this shit.
None.
The Second Amendment has been completely weaponized,
and our opponents know this. Our opponents know, just like Hitler in 1923, they know how to manipulate these weak institutions, and they know how to run the line. They know how to. That's what Trump did masterfully. He ran the ragged edge of the regulations. He ran the ragged just enough over the line where it was like, well, is it really worth it? I mean, the idea that fucker might finally go down because he took classified documents home.
I know.
Instead of actually trying to overthrow the fucking government. I mean, the idea that the first federal attorney grand jury we've heard about is the classified documents one. I mean, everybody's like, oh no, there's a secret. They're definitely investigating. I'm like, the fuck if they are, because it's like
we would hear about it. Like,
yes, 100%. It's so. I mean, we heard right away when they did vote for the classified document. I mean, the idea this fucker might actually pay a price because he took 10 boxes of secret documents home to his fucking office.
It's the Mueller report all over again, right? Everybody's got the fucking hopium going. I'm glad you brought up. Every time I criticize Garland, I get hammered on the left. You don't understand. You don't understand. He's famous for keeping his secrets on his. Oh, for God's sake! Bullshit. Because you know what? He doesn't have to keep the secret, because if he was targeting these Republicans, they'd be squawking right and left about how they're getting targeted. If they interviewed any of these assholes, because they do every time. They're proud. Steve Bannon would give his left nut right now to have Garland come after him, because he'll make millions off of it. Okay, they kill.
Exactly right.
So the military.
You guys got me venting.
Okay, man. Let it out. Let it out, bro.
That's what our show is
well,
for.
luckily, I'm not my home, so.
I have questions. You go next, Jim. I got questions.
I want to talk about the military for a second, because to me that we talk about the thin blue line, right? That's the big giant green line, right? Like if the military is the difference between us being a democracy or not at the end of the day, right? Because there is going to be a constitutional crisis.
Apolitical and military that answers to a civilian.
Will be a constitutional crisis because the right way, the fascists are forcing it, right? And so to me, that's the scariest moment, because the military will need to make a decision, right? Whatever that situation is, that gets manufactured. And I've seen enough corruption going on in the military right now to concern me. The DOD IG report that came out about 6 months after Biden was inaugurated was a total whitewash. It was just relying on the.
No, we were good. No, the whole Charlie Flynn thing. That was just a mistake.
Well, Charlie,
anyway,
he's fine. Yeah. He's fine. Don't worry about you. Fuck you. He's in charge of 90,000
They've
American
convinced
troops.
themselves. I think again, they want to convince themselves everything's okay. That they don't have an extremist problem. They don't have a politicalization problem. And I disagree with a lot of my colleagues like General Milley. I'm not a giant fan of General Milley. I think General Milley, while he may have held the line at times with Trump, I do believe that in the same token, he's also lost the bubble on the real threats. And so it does worry me. I do believe there's this sort of obtuseness, if you will, to the military leadership, the military chain of command, and the institutional, what they face as an institution, the white supremacy issue, the issue of the growing line of Trumpist type language, MAGA language that comes out of the military, the fact that over 10% of those who've been charged with crimes from January 6th are veterans, to include serving officers. I mean, I'm still horrified the idea that a serving United States Marine Corps major stationed at Quantico was one of the guys who pulled a cop off the door, opened the door for the rioters. He broke his way in the Capitol and assaulted a police officer. A serving major, the United States Marine Corps. And you know what the Marine Corps has done to tighten things up? Diddly.
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. They didn't issue memos. They didn't just put, hey, that's fucked up. Don't do that. They literally they're burying their head in the sand, hoping it's an anomaly. And the problem is it's like a virus, right? It's like a cancer. It's growing. And I do worry that too many in the military chain of command think that it's not a cancer. That everything's fine. No, we nipped it in the bud, you know. And meanwhile, this black dark cells are growing more and more in the body politic of the military. And I see it all the time. I have people, because of my very vocal criticism of West Point, my criticism of my school, because of my criticism of the military, I have people from all over the world reach out to me and say, Fred, you wouldn't believe the shit the stories they're telling me from around the world are just shocking. And the politicization, what they face, the religious extremism, the Christofascism, the things that are said just in passing are things I couldn't imagine we would have said when I served before 2010. But that's where we are. So yeah, I do agree. I think we've got a problem in the military of a recognition that we face a crisis. Again, all these institutions are just saying, look, we just want to get to normal and just let things ride. And the problem is our opponents are doing. And look, you see it. Our opponents know this. That's why you see this game of, and it's horrifying, like the Matt Gaetzes and the Madison Cawthorns and others who are splitting the military leadership. And of course, our friend Tucker Carlson, who is splitting the military leadership. Imagine what they're doing. They attack the leadership as being too woke, and they're undermining the troops. They're literally purposefully, and with a plan, dividing our United States military against itself. What a horrifying thought. Imagine that these people call themselves Republicans. I was a Republican Ronald Reagan guy, and these people are literally directly undermining the good order and discipline of the military for their political ends. And that never ends well. It doesn't.
That's how you get a military coup.
Right.
That's how you get a coup. You may not get. It's interesting. You may not get a coup, but you will get somebody who says, "Well, he's in charge now, so fuck it." And you'll get the Wehrmacht. What you'll get is the Wehrmacht. You'll get the Wehrmacht, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The standing jury. They said, "Look, okay, you're in charge now. Yeah, he's a dictator, but he's in charge." You get a willingness to comply, which is just as dangerous. Right.
We have a radicalization problem. We have a disinformation problem. It is infecting all of our institutions, which are under siege by autocratic capture. And as Jim notes, you don't, the only way you deal with fascists is by defeating them, because they're not going away. Sometimes they go to sleep. As a former Republican, I'm doing my best to listen to Republicans right now and listen to conservatives. I'm listening to everybody on a local level. I'm involved in a campaign that's nonpartisan, but everything's political. So I'm listening to everybody. How can you tell your, former Republican or current Republican brethren that we have a fucking info war going on and their minds are being assaulted? And that, of course, goes the same on the left. But right now we're seeing it coming, the most of the infection we're seeing is coming from the fifth column, and they generally are Republicans.
Yeah, and that's the question. That's a $1 billion question, and it's even a question the Beer Hall Project is trying to answer. How do we convince our own fellow Americans? And I try to turn it down on my own. People say, "Oh, I hate them," so it's like, look, I hate certain members. Chip Roy can die in a fucking fire. I don't care. I just, but the average Republican person I know, I think they're decent people. I have family members, my better half's family members who are of that ilk. And a lot of times they are just, I have my own family, hell, I want to talk about my personal family. My own family members are a part of that, and my siblings. And it's hard. The answer is tough. I've seen some people approach it sort of like a cult thing. Like, how do you talk to somebody who's in a cult? You don't call them an idiot. You don't tell them they're stupid. You say, hey, look, you're not getting the full picture. How do we convince them they're not? Because one of the things you see, which is insidious about why that Fox News does it, is it's not so much what they present, it's what they don't. Right? They're very careful presenting information, and it's a very clever game they play. And so and so these people are seeing this news, and you can't say that's a lie. They go, no, I saw it, it's real. Like, that is real, but you're out of context, right? You know, that one person, that one case isn't all of them, you know, and so it's a very insidious, and there's a playbook for it. So it is I wish I could sit here. That I was nervous about coming to the show to tell you I have no fucking answers. I wish I did, and I do think we have to do that research. I know my organization, we're trying to raise money to actually do that research. Say, well, how do we convince large parts of America that they are being fooled? I mean, you know, after the war, we had to walk.
We should talk after the show.
We walked Germans.
Yeah, we should.
We walked Germans through the concentration camps and say, look, this actually happened here. You did this. Your fellow Germans did this, and you tried to bury your head in the sand, and you smelled the corpses and denied what it was. But you need to see with your own two eyes. I'm not sure how we do that in an information environment today, but that's
the film. That's a brilliant point. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just obviously you're involved in veteran affairs and in military. So in part of my job, I have a company that does litigation support, right? And so we worked on the Camp Lejeune project and the chemical exposures thing. Yeah. And so one of my questions I was very curious about is, first of all, it's horrific the disregard and exposure that our military members are just forced to work in these environments. They're just covered in chemicals, drenched. You know, they result in horrible cancers later in life with almost little to no VA support or long-term healthcare options. Do they see, or do individuals see within the military that is essentially a result of the GOP or Republican agenda making those chemicals legal, making those chemicals available, keeping those chemicals off of the OSHA, carcinogenic list? There's a number of games that they play. Of course, Trump basically demolished the EPA, resulting in the exposure to our military members tenfold. I don't think
so. I think it's a classic story. It's such a complicated story of where those chemicals came from, how they were used. Typically in the military, you just accept that, quote, the government's trying to fuck you, right? I mean, that's the military mindset. It's like, I wish I could tell you.
He's not wrong.
It's the government, right? I mean, and of course, a big part of our conversation, by the way, it is true. I mean, but it's not necessarily a partisan. They're going to fuck you over. I mean, the burn pit issue. The burn pit issue is a perfect example of multiple administrations ignoring the rules, and then trying to bury it and hope we all die. Look at the PACT Act. Like, we're trying to get this law passed right now to take give toxic exposure, guys. I know a lot of guys that got sick. I have a lot of bosses who are very young with cancer they shouldn't have, and we get the Republicans are blocking it because it's not fiscally responsible. So they're going to let us get sick and die because it's not fiscally responsible.
Oh my God!
Literally, they'll show that on spreadsheets. They'll wait you out. They'll wait out a generation until they die, so they don't have to change the formulation or they don't have to change the chemical makeup.
Gulf War. I mean, I'm a Gulf War guy, right? The Gulf War syndrome. They did a study. They're finding every day that the reason a lot of us have Gulf War syndrome, and I've got some of it myself, is exposure to these chemicals. Specifically, when they blew up this bunker down in southern Iraq. And had sarin and stuff in it. And it's funny. I've got when they put out the word that this explosion, there's this big mushroom cloud when that thing went off. I've got pictures underneath the goddamn cloud, like, oh, look, a big mushroom cloud. It's so
oh my God.
and so and we're still fighting that to this day, right? We're still trying to convince them that we actually got sick. So it's
these are the same people. These are the same people who will go support our troops.
Exactly.
That's exactly
right.
Just today, Madison Cawthorn is a perfect example, right? Yeah. Literally, the shithead, and I do mean shithead, was tweeting the other day, imagine if we spent $40 billion on our veterans. We spent $300 billion on veterans, and you little shit, voted against the PACT Act. That guy, and you know why he said at the time? Because it wasn't fiscally responsible. So while this shithead is turning down aid for Ukraine and saying we should go to veterans, he's also saying, fuck those guys. So it's like, again, it's all, but that's the point. And go back to what I say a lot is, it's all part of governing by performance. It's performative jackassery, as I like to call it, and that's what a good part of our governing now is. Not governing; it's just performance. It's John Kennedy in Louisiana is a perfect example. Mr. Foghorn fucking Leghorn, who doesn't speak like that, but he does his little corn pone act on Fox News. He gets that chick in the back of my house don't have no. Shut the fuck up, John Kennedy. You're a goddamn Oxford grad. Okay, but it's performative jackassery. It gets him on Fox. Look at Greg Abbott. That whole fucking stunt that Greg Abbott pulled on the border cost Texas $4 billion and estimated $9 billion. Didn't find a single piece of contraband, and the whole thing. He got 3.5 minutes of Fox News. And guys, the only thing he wanted was that 3.5 fucking minutes of Tucker Carlson.
That's right.
I'm going next because
Go.
I'm about to explode. This is so amazing. Performative jackassery. Are we gonna be talking about that for the next few weeks? Hell to the yes, we are.
That's what it is. I mean, they're not governing. No one's governing. Okay.
Right.
And a lot of the one I like some of the candidates that I work with is they want to govern. We need people to go to Washington and actually govern.
Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene
Yeah.
doesn't have a district office.
Right.
Okay. She literally has said, fuck, she's literally said, fuck you so much to her constituents. She isn't even bothering to pretend she's governing.
Yeah.
Right?
She gets all the money
She's
from
a
California
reality-
and Texas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is a reality TV propaganda star. That's what these
I
people
mean, she
are.
learned from the school of Trump. I mean, she learned from the fucking press. She learned from the president. Trump.
TV's kind of fucked us, but so back to performative jackassery. Amazing, Oscar-winning directors went to Germany at the end of World War II, and they filmed people and they filmed the reality, and a lot of them came back not quite the same. But in particular, what you just referenced, when you have a group of Germans from the village, all rosy-cheeked and lovely, going into the concentration camp, and then you see them coming out of the camp, and they were gaunt and withdrawn, and they saw what had happened. So fast forward to what you're working on with Beer Hall Project, and people that I know who are conservatives, radicalized by Fox, etc. If you talk about January 6th, they will tell you there was just a few bad actors, right? So they will never admit to what actually the reality of what happened. If you happen to mention Peter Thiel purchasing democracy, they will just knee-jerk you with George Soros.
George Soros.
That's exactly right. That happened to me with somebody I really treasure and really like. And I was stunned, and yet I need a couple tools from you. I need to know, what do we say when they tell us that January 6th was just actors and they call me a communist for telling them that that is not so? Number one. Number two, when you get the Soros knee jerk, what do you do?
You got me on the spot. I'm still struggling with that myself. I mean, what we do is we very clearly show the truth, that there was violence, that people were hurt, 149 people were injured. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't agitators. That the people who've been accused have admitted they were fooled by Donald Trump. But you're right. There's this wall of. I wish I was that guy. There's a wall of disbelief that is very, very hard to penetrate with the facts. And it's going to take us a coordinated and long-term effort to show facts. And this is the danger I find with my friends in the Biden administration, who are governing in many ways and messaging like it's 1991 in a lot of ways, right? They're just, we'll get Jen Psaki out there. We'll do a Psaki bomb, and okay, and then don't worry, because Walter Cronkite will pick it up and he'll tell the world the truth. And the truth is, we live in a 24/7 social media environment. Like, for example, the day after the leak with the Supreme Court, you saw all the Republicans were on message by about 1 o'clock that day with the message that it wasn't with the content, it's the leak. The leak is undermined the Supreme Court.
Right.
And everybody from Mike Huckabee to Tucker Carlson to Senator Jack Wad were all on message. And our friends on the left just aren't doing that coordinated message. So we find ourselves in this situation where we're not on a coordinated message, right? We're just kind of flailing about. So we're fighting with one arm tied behind our back against a very coordinated enemy who knows how to stay on message. So we're fighting that right there, where we're already with one arm tied behind our back when we're trying to convince these people the facts is otherwise. We can put them on the defensive. The other day when Jen Psaki, they came at her about the president calling out Rick Scott, and the answer on Fox News was like, well, he's just one senator. Well, she came armed. She said, well, no, actually, it's these 20 people to include Ronna McDaniel, the head of the GOP, who says this is a great plan. Well, the rest of the day, Fox News is like, well, yeah, but Rick Scott says, we can put them on the defensive And that will
Down
infect the people who
punch.
watch to make them question. But we're not doing a good job of being offensive. Look, when I was a public affairs officer of the Army, one of the things that frustrated me with the Army was the Army plays very much defensive public affairs. And what I mean by that is they wait for some bad news to drop and they try to fucking explain it away, right? And I was like, look, we got to tell the bad news ourselves. We got to be aggressive, or the good news.
Yep.
We got to aggressively tell the good news. We got to seek out the media. We don't want to keep them at arm's length. We got to bring them in. And I used to do that quite a bit in Iraq. I dragged media with me on trips to go visit the Iraqi security forces. I showed them the facts. Again, if you show them with their own two eyes, you can tell the truth. And my frustration right now is I do feel like the progressive left and the Biden administration and others are playing very much a game of defense. The right says something fucking crazy, and we spend a week. I call it, the 3 C's. Deceived. Was it deceive, divert, and and divide? Right?
Despair.
They divide. They're dividing us. They're deceptive. They're diverting us. They're deceiving us. And the perfect, like the baby formula thing. Oh, well, we can't give money to Ukraine. We got a baby formula crisis. Oh, we got a baby formula crisis because they're giving it all the brown people are getting it. The illegal aliens. They're giving our baby formula to illegal aliens. And then for 3 days. Yeah, and we fall for it every fucking time. Smart people I respect.
It's that playing not to lose.
It's
the
like,
playing not to lose is
look,
the playing to win.
Look, a baby wolf. Go chase the baby wolf. Oh my God, I love baby wolves. And it's like, and meanwhile, we're not talking about abortion. We're not talking about the assault on our democracy. We're not talking about January 6th being smearing shit in the walls of our Capitol with $30 million in damage. No, we're chasing these things, right? And that's a perfect example. The way they do January 6th is a perfect example. Oh, well, they let them in. Yeah, on one side, because they had to, they were ordered to. On the other side, they were fighting their way in. It's this constant battle, and we keep falling for the diversion.
That's right. That's right.
And that's one of my, because we're not being offensive. We're not being aggressive and pushing them. So they have to fight. They have to get our diversions. It's very frustrating.
Our show is working on the pre-buttal. We're definitely working on the pre-buttal. And we also have to deal with the fact that we are dealing with a radicalized set of extremists that have no morals, and a party that still has some semblance of morals that wishes to help people versus a party that doesn't care if everybody dies. So we only have like 1 or 2 more minutes. I would love to give you the final word, just something that you'd like to leave us with, because everything you've said is so important to our mission with this show. So if there's anything you'd like to
thank you. I think thanks for having me. But it was a lot of fun. I got to rant. I love ranting. No, I think it's kind of my jam. No, I think what people tell us what can you do? Oh, voting is not enough. I can't tell you how often people, especially on the left, will say, "Well, I did vote. It didn't any good." Yeah, but 100 million people didn't fucking vote. Okay, so don't give me that bullshit. Did your whole family vote? Did your neighbors vote? Don't give me that bullshit. Because I'm in the political business, and a lot of people stay home. Look, Terry McAuliffe didn't run a great campaign, but he lost because 1 million people who voted in 2020 didn't vote a year later in Virginia. Okay. He decided to just write off rural Virginia, and where he had a 30% voter turnout for Dems that in some counties, he only had 25 this time. Well, that's a lot of Dems. Okay. And so I'm a big believer in, look, if you really want to say this democracy, it isn't just voting, but it's donating to campaigns. It's a volunteering campaign. It's canvassing for candidates. It's knocking on doors. It's meeting your neighbors where they meet and having direct conversations like, look, you got to get out and vote. It's make sure that everybody who even remotely has a D in their name goes out and votes Democratic once and for all. We're leaving too many people. Too many Americans are sitting out. Look, by some estimates, as much as 50% of Americans aren't participating in our freaking political process in any way, shape, or form. I tell it a lot. People talk about the right and the left, and there's the center. There's also these, I don't know what the fuck I am. I'm not even touching that. And hey, look, I just want my economy. I just want my pocketbook. Well, one thing I know for a fact is that autocracies are really bad for your pocketbook, right? When they shut your company down because your boss was on the wrong political party, I said, so I always tell people, well, autocracy is a pocketbook issue too, because you're not going to like working for a fucking autocracy. And so I do believe we still have to out-organize them. And I'm heartened with the fact we outnumber them. It's a shrinking majority. That's why they're doing. That's why they're lashing out. That's why they're talking about right replacement. But they're attacking our kids. They're attacking the next generation.
Brainwash people into voting for them.
They have to brainwash the next generation. And that's the final note is, I work with this group called Voters for Tomorrow. And Voters for Tomorrow is brilliant. And they figured it out. Look, the attack on our schools, the abortion fight, all this is attacking our kids. They're trying to get to our kids. They want to shape a next generation. And there's that woman, the congressman, the day before January 6th, she gave a speech. And if you remember, she got in trouble because she said, Hitler was right. We have to reach the youth. and she got in trouble for the Hitler is right part. But she gave away the ghost. We have to reach the youth. So when they're attacking curriculum in Florida, when they're attacking gay teachers, when they're attacking, you know, your ability to have an abortion, the goal is to shape an entire generation. Did you guys see today where Kash Patel is putting out a children's book about the big lie?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Every laugh. What a fucking ridiculous thing. A children's book about a big lie.
it's
Yeah.
No,
terrifying.
that's not funny
Not
at all.
fucking
Yeah.
funny at
The
Yeah.
all.
goal is to
Losing-
shape. They're shaping the next generation to be Republican, white, Christian,
right.
fascist, and that's scary. So I tell people all the time, you know, they're not attacking teachers. They get mad. No. It's kind of like, you know, in the Army, when I shoot an enemy soldier who's wearing body armor, my target's not the body armor. Okay, the body armor protects him. And when I kill that soldier, we don't report how many pieces of body armor we killed. We report how many enemies we killed. And in many ways, our schools, our administrators, our teachers, all these institutions are the body armor for our kids. But believe me, our opponent's target is the kids. It's the kids. And that's what they're doing. And that's what we're up against.
There it is.
Anyway, that's my
That's
final
what we need.
terrifying, really
No,
rude.
that
Hey,
is so important.
more optimism for you.
That's very true.
But I mean,
understand.
we identify our enemy and we go on the offensive, and that's why I love the candidates
I
I'm
love
working with. I love the work I'm doing because look, if we just sit and wait for them to act, we're always going to be losing. You know,
Yes.
it's time.
Yeah.
It's time to fight back.
Beautiful.
Thank you, sir.
We're with you, Fred.
Yeah.
I had fun.
Thank you, Fred.
Thanks for having
Thank you
me.
for your time, buddy.
Hey,
This is the part where
don't leave. I want to talk to you after the show, though. We
I'm gonna
gotta-
chill out then.
This is
All right,
the
I'll
part
stay right
where
here.
this is the part where we beg you to come back because this was just too fast
That
and
too.
fun.
I love it.
Thank you so
So-
very much. Actually, why don't we just close out now, Fred? We were
Hey, one
gonna
thing, if you can have your viewers try out my new podcast on Democracy with FP Wellman. It's
Of course.
it's on the call-in platform live, but it's
Awesome.
also published on Apple and Spotify and all your favorite places to get your podcast. But on Democracy
Fantastic.
with FP Wellman just launched. Get ready for my second episode tomorrow, Wednesday. So
Awesome.
I
Congrats.
love all the viewers I can get. Thanks. I'm
Fantastic.
scared.
We'll make it
We're gonna have that all linked in the notes
Awesome.
once this releases.
It'll be included.
But, yeah.
I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
and for those of our listeners who still have Twitter, who haven't abandoned that platform or been kicked off, what's your Twitter handle, Fred?
FP Wellman, Frederick Paul Wellman, FP Wellman. I'm there.
Thank you.
I live on
FP
Twitter. I live and breathe
Just
Twitter.
In lieu of a digital dissent for today, we decided just to have a moment of silence for everybody we lost this weekend. So if you'd like to join us for that, we're just going to take a few moments just to reflect on the losses of these lives from this weekend. So.
Yeah.
All right, Sean, take us out.
All right, guys. See you soon.